Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pramanik Astrology channel. Today we have with us Michael Reed from Authentic Astrology. Welcome, Michael, to Pramanik Astrology channel.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on your channel. Before we get talking, because I wanted to talk to your viewers today about the Darakaraka planet and relationships and Nakshatras and how they all kind of intertwine to create relationships. But before we did that, I wanted to tell your viewers about a couple of things that I've got coming up. One, which is what I call a group session. It's a new idea I'm working with on Rahu and Ketu. And so all people who register for this group session, I'm going to take a look at Rahu and Ketu in their horoscope, a brief look at that for all attendees. If you want your chart to be anonymous, that's absolutely fine too, because sometimes people are that way, but they still want their chart like that. Yeah. And so if you register, it's only $49 for that. And it's on the 19th of August at 7 p.m. London time, if people want to do that. And I forgot if I said the price. It's $49 if people want to register. I also have a couple of approaching courses coming up, but if people are interested in that, there's a webinar courses link, which I'll give to you that you can put in the bottom. Yeah. Something I wanted to talk to your viewers today about in regards to the Darakaraka. Well, first let's explain what the Darakaraka is. So the Darakaraka is the planet in the horoscope that occupies the smallest degree. So just so your viewers have a general idea, I'll briefly share a chart and then I'll bring it back to this screen.
Yes, that would be great.
A clear perspective of what it is that I actually mean, because sometimes it's hard to understand that.
It will help people who don't know what Darakaraka is.
Yeah. So what you do is you look for the planet in the horoscope that has the lowest degree. So for instance, if you look here, you can see the sun is 29 degrees and 49 minutes. That's why it's the Atmakaraka, which is the other end of the spectrum from the Darakaraka. So we're looking for the one with the lowest degree. Now, you would be tempted to say Rahu or Ketu, but we don't use Rahu or Ketu in this instance. The system I work with doesn't consider those as karakas. You just take the embodied planets, meaning Sun through Saturn, okay? So Jupiter at 3 degrees and 6 minutes is the planet that is at the lowest degree. And so that makes Jupiter the Darakaraka planet, okay? So the Darakaraka planet indicates the spouse of the individual. And you can know a lot about the person's relationship patterns if you know that Darakaraka planet. Okay, so for instance, if someone has the sun as the Darakaraka, they're going to gravitate towards people who are constant and confident and willing to sacrifice and willing to go the extra mile, and also sometimes, sadly enough, people who like to be the center of attention, right? So, but here's a funny thing that happens with the Darakaraka planet. If your Darakaraka planet is strong, like let's say, for instance, the sun is exalted in Aries, you'll have a natural tendency to attract into your life relationship partners of that solar type, that constant and confident, willing to sacrifice, self-assured type. You'll just naturally attract people of that type. But if you have a debilitated sun, or a sun that is in some other way, shape, or form afflicted, right? Like let's say it's joined with a lot of cruel planets, or it's joined with a lot of cruel planets and placed in a Dushtana house, right? Or joined with a lot of cruel planets in a Dushtana house and in poor dignity. Well, then you're probably going to find you have a pattern with relationships where you attract people who have low self-esteem, who don't believe in themselves, who aren't constant within themselves. And so it's an interesting thing to look at. So I thought we'd go through and talk about the different types of Darakarakas. So we just spoke about the sun. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have one question. Like, if I have sun in Aries with the lowest degree, then is what you have discussed. As in, when I have sun exalted and with the lowest degree, I will be attracted towards a sun-like personality.
Correct. Yes, most definitely. You'll be attracted to solar type relationships for the most part. Now, I don't want to digress too far,
Okay.
but just to give a general idea, different dasha periods bring different
Okay.
types of relationships. You see my point?
Yes. Yes, I
So
got it.
we're looking at the natural tendency of the individual in
Yes.
the horoscope. Like for instance, if Venus is also a relationship planet, during Venus dasha, they may have a different type of relationship than a sun. But the Darakaraka will show us generally the types of relationships we attract and the types of people we should aspire to be with. Yeah. So it's a similar thing, you know, with the moon, like going and taking a look at the moon. Qualities of the moon are, the moon's very adaptable. A quality of the moon that a lot of people don't know about is the moon has something that's called a creeping form. All the planets have a form, and the
Yes.
moon's form is a creeping form. What that means in regards to the moon is the moon does what it has to do to get its needs met.
Oh,
Okay, so it will adapt to the situation in order to get its needs met. So lunar types of Darakarakas would be people who are very adaptable. That can be good and that can be bad, right?
yes.
You
Yes.
know, so if you have a weak moon in as your Darakaraka, you may have a relationship partner who's a little too adaptable to the situation. They're a little too, you know, wishy-washy and not
I
really
understand. Yes.
emotionally strong within themselves. Yeah. But if you have a good solid moon, like a Mula Trikona moon in Taurus, then you know, chances are you'll likely, you know, attract into your life people who are emotionally stable, who are good at taking care of their own needs. They're not needy by nature. In addition to that, they're very good at taking care of your needs as an individual. Very nurturing partners. That's another lunar quality, because the moon not only fulfills its own needs, but it wants to fulfill the needs of
Fulfillment.
others. That's why we have the moon indicating mother for the most part, right?
Yes.
And generally very emotionally stable people with the moon. The moon's also the most sociable planet. So you'll generally find people who have the moon as their Darakaraka. They go for people who like to socialize and like to interact with other people. And of course, you can apply regular astrological rules to this too, which is if the person has the moon as their Darakaraka and there's a Kema Droma Yoga present, then their partner may not be quite so sociable on that level, right?
Mm.
So Mars types of Darakarakas. Well, the Mars type of Darakaraka would be the athletic type, the probably people who have a really nice physique, nice chiseled physique, or physically active a lot of times, very strong-willed.
Passionate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry? I didn't.
Passionate.
Passionate, yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely, very passionate. Sometimes with Mars, though, there can be the tendency to go too far in that direction and to get
Oh,
easily frustrated or exhausted very easily, or be short-fused and have a short temper. Those would be more of the hallmarks of a less strong Mars in the case of the individual,
okay.
right? Go ahead, yeah.
If I have a strong Mars, then this passion will be present in the chart. Or if I have a debilitated Mars or a weak or afflicted Mars, then this will, mess up the thing
There
of
will
Mars.
be less of that. There will be less of that.
It will
Yes.
be less of that if I
Yeah,
have
but, you
debilitated.
know, Mars in Cancer. One of the things about Mars in Cancer is because Mars deals with the energy in the body.
Mm.
So you'll find in terms of how Mars translates into people, if it's debilitated, it's very low energy. It gets exhausted very easily, and so therefore it gets frustrated as well, and more short-tempered because it doesn't want to be as tolerant in that scenario.
Right.
Yeah, because you have to consider Cancer on many levels is about fulfilling needs anyway. So if Mars isn't having its needs met, it's going to go, oh, this isn't worth it for me. And, so yeah. So the weaker, the less the passion is. Yeah. You just reminded me of an interesting concept, which I'll share with your viewers if there's time after we get through all this. Then we have Mercury. Mercury is the Darakaraka. Mercury is the Darakaraka is, interestingly enough, most people would think of Venus as being an artist, but Mercury is the real artist. So Mercury is like the skilled artisan. You'll find people who have Mercury as their Darakaraka, they're attracted to artistic types or equally very intellectual types, right?
Okay.
People who are analytical by nature, like to really think about things, work through things. But if you've got a weak Mercury in the chart, like let's say, for instance, Mercury in Pisces, right? Or let's say you've got Mercury in Aries joining Mars, where Mercury is not going to be, very happy for the most part, then you'll find that the person can have a lack of good organizational skills, right?
Wow.
Because Mercury is very dexterous. It can do a lot of things simultaneously when it's strong, but when it's weak, it's just kind of all over the place and isn't very detail oriented, is a good way to put it. Yeah. So those would be the hallmarks of of Mercury, both strong and weak. So with Jupiter, the Jupiter type of for viewers out there, our apologies. It's in this wonderful world of technology. Things stop and start. Internet drops in, drops out. We do our best with it. So Jupiter type spouses, to reiterate, are people who are very uplifting and inspiring to be around. People who are spiritually oriented, very devoted as well. Yeah, devoted in a different way than the sun. The sun's very sacrifice oriented. Jupiter is very devoted towards helping the person along, giving advice. It would be the relationship partner who's good at advising the individual, right? Then when you've got
counseling.
Sorry?
Counseling.
Yeah, most definitely. Jupiter and Venus are the natural counselor planets of the horoscope. But a weak Jupiter would make it so that the person attracts people who aren't very inspiring to be around, and people who generally have a lack of faith and tend to be a little more pessimistic in nature. It can be like a hallmark of a Jupiter in Capricorn position, obviously.
Wow.
So then when you've got Venus, Venus can be very passionate too in a different way than Mars, because Venus deals with virility in the body. Generally, these will be the types of relationship attractions where the person's attracted to looks and features a lot more than inner looks. Equally, there can be an attraction to eloquence. Venus is the natural poet, so people can quite often, with Venus as the Darakaraka, they like people who are poetic by nature, like songwriters and things like that. Then you've got the weaker Venus Darakarakas, and when Venus as the Darakaraka is weak, then those are people who don't generally find any pleasure in life. They would be the type of relationship partner that's hard to please. No matter what you do for that partner, it's not good enough. And then the person ends up blaming themselves, when in actuality, it's probably just more that the partner doesn't find pleasure in anything in life. And that's, it's because Venus on a certain level is about meaning and a quest for meaning through material things in our lives. We want to have a meaningful and enjoyable life. So when Venus is weak as the Darakaraka, then it can be the types of relationships where the partner has a hard time finding pleasure. Saturn is the Darakaraka, discipline. The person's very disciplined, very steady, very similar to the sun. And it's interesting because what a lot of people don't know is the sun and Saturn have a parent-child relationship.
Yes.
So Saturn's a child of the sun. So there's some similar qualities that are there. It's just the darker side of it, right?
Yes.
So very disciplined, feeling like one has to do this in a very practical way, right? So very steady spouses who are like an anchor for you when Saturn's strong, very practical and methodical in a good way. And then the opposite side of that would be if Saturn was debilitated, or like Saturn in Cancer, where the person is just going to be on a downer all the time. Like everything is really, down and out with them, and lack of discipline, all the negative things, negative sides of the positives we were just talking about. Yeah.
Will it put, if I have a Saturn as my Darakaraka, will this put more responsibility towards my partner if
That's a
I
good
have
point. It can do. It can do. Or you want spouses who are responsible for themselves too, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing to have. But here's an interesting thing, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk about first and foremost today, which is if you have a weak Darakaraka planet, by nature, you're likely going to attract into your life more of the negative polarity of the type of relationship related to the planet, right? So let's say you have a debilitated sun as your Darakaraka. You'll likely attract people who aren't very constant, who aren't very self-assured, who aren't very willing to sacrifice. And so if you're a person who finds yourself in a specific type of relationship pattern that's not good for you and that you're not happy with, a good thing to do is to look at that Darakaraka planet and look at its well-being. Look and see if it's in good dignity, because this is a Jaimini technique, and primarily with Jaimini techniques, it's the dignity of the planet that's the most important.
Rashi is important.
The Rashi is important, and also the planets that are there with it or equally interacting with it by Rashi aspect. But that's a little too complex to go into. But generally just want like a good, strong Darakaraka planet. If you don't have one, like let's say you have a debilitated sun, and you keep finding yourself getting into these relationship patterns with people who don't believe in themselves, and that you're spending your whole time helping them to believe in themselves rather than getting the support you need from the relationship, then what you need to look for are people with those exalted suns or those Leo suns or people who have a strong sun, because then you're going to be getting what you need from your solar partner. And it works with any other planet. Like if you've got a weak Jupiter in your chart, and Jupiter's your Darakaraka, and you find you're in relationships with people who have a lack of faith or they're not very spiritually oriented, well, you need to go find someone with Jupiter in Cancer or Jupiter in Sagittarius or Jupiter in Pisces. Yeah.
Okay. But that person will connect with this person who has this debilitated Jupiter?
Probably not. They will have to kind of
that is the challenge.
Exactly. They will have to look for their relationship partners and discreetly ask, oh, when's your birthday? Because everybody's into astrology, and we all often into scenarios where we ask those questions and people go, oh, why are you asking that?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's a good technique. Another thing to do too, what makes it even more powerful is so let's just go back to this chart. So as we were pointing out to your viewers, you have the Darakaraka planet and you have the Atmakaraka planet. So Darakaraka's lowest degree, except for Rahu and Ketu, you always leave them out. Atmakaraka is the highest degree. Right? So this is a simple way you can look for this. You just look for the planet with the highest degree. So going back to the regular screen, if you, like let's say for instance, you have a weak Mercury as your Darakaraka, a really good version of your relationship partner would be someone who has Mercury as their Atmakaraka in Virgo, because that's an exalted Atmakaraka, and so that's going to make it even more powerful for the individual.
Wow.
And so that's another really good thing to look for, is to look for someone who has that as their Atmakaraka planet. But I wanted to, go ahead. Yeah, most definitely. I'll take a drink of water while you're asking.
Yes. Can you explain this a little bit with one more example? Like you explained this with Mercury as a Darakaraka for one person. With a debilitated Mercury, should go for person who has Mercury as Amatyakaraka, and they will have a great match. Atmakaraka, the highest degree planet.
Yeah, let me find a good chart to open up to look at that. I'll do that before I open it. Let's see. There's a good one. And let's click the button. There we go. So for instance, in this chart, which is the chart of Neil Armstrong, one of the men to first land on the moon, right? So he has Venus as as his Darakaraka,
Okay.
right? Because if you look and see in finding it, Venus is at 1 degree in 44
Debilitated.
of Virgo, and it's a debilitated Venus, right?
Yeah.
So he needs to find someone with Venus in Pisces. Just, even Venus in Pisces as any planet will work. But at the same time, it's going to be even stronger if Venus is in Pisces and it's the Atmakaraka, you see, for that person. So ideally, he should find someone with Venus and Pisces as the Atmakaraka. Go ahead.
Why it will work for them? Why it will work if he goes for the person with the Pisces as an Atmakaraka?
The reason being is the planet in our horoscope that is the particular Karaka. What Karakas are is they're producers of something. That's kind of what it translates as, is the Karaka produces something. So in other words, Venus is the Darakaraka, produces your spouse, right? So if you've got a weak Venus, you're going to produce a spouse that's not really the best one for you. Like with this debilitated Venus, a spouse that, is always unhappy, lack of pleasure in life, things along those lines. And the lesson for the person is, wow, I keep getting into these relationships with people who get no enjoyment for life. So the reason it's they're supposed to attract to someone with a stronger Venus is so that they break out of that pattern, bring more of the good qualities of that planet in, so that they can resolve the pattern that's there with that planet. Because there's something for them to learn from that pattern, which generally relates to the concept that you don't have to be in a position with things that are dissatisfactory. You need to alter it. So just like when something's wrong in our lives, we want to find the remedy to the problem, so to speak. This is just the simple remedy. It's like if Venus is your Darakaraka and it's debilitated, try to get more interaction with people who have Venus and Pisces. They'll give you a lot more of what you need. So here's another thing I wanted to share with your viewers, which relates to Nakshatras, right? Wow. So because this is an extra layer of it, right? And we'll go back and we'll look at a chart or two in association with this, but let me bring up my other PowerPoint, which I was going to share with people. And where's that button? There we go. Excellent. Each nakshatra belongs to a kingdom, okay? And I've made a chart here of how the planets are broken down into kingdoms. If you notice, we have the Dhatu kingdom, and we have the Mula kingdom. That's not to be confused with Mula nakshatra. This is something different, okay? And we have the Jiva kingdom. So I'm going to explain each of these briefly, which is the Dhatu kingdom. Let's start with that. Dhatu is the mineral kingdom. So when we think of stones, what's a quality of stones, of a rock, of a mineral?
Solid. It is solid. Yeah. It's stable.
Yeah, very solid, very stable. Also, what do you do with the stone every single day if you're here on Earth? You stand on it. Right. So it's very supportive too. Yes, exactly. So there's a lesson with each of these kingdoms that the nakshatras belong to. So with the Dhatu nakshatras, the lesson is one of support, being strong, being stable, being resolute within oneself. But when these Dhatu nakshatras are functioning in more of a difficult polarity, then the person's always going to be wanting support, wanting other people to support them, sometimes even frustrated that other people aren't, right? These are the people who are going, I'm always having to do this by myself and nobody's helping me out, right? Well, they usually will have some prominent planet in a Dhatu nakshatra. So we're going to translate this over into relationships here in a moment too.
Wow.
Then we have the Mula nakshatra. So not Mula nakshatra itself, but the kingdom Mula, the plant kingdom, right? So I often use this analogy, and I've got some wonderful flowers behind us to highlight, right? So imagine that these flowers are outside, and just imagine for a moment that you've got like a lamp Yeah, you've got a lamp outside, strangely enough. I know it's kind of odd, but you've got a
Yeah.
lamp outside right next to the
Yes.
flowers. The flowers are growing towards the sun. But
Mm-hmm.
what might happen is if a storm cloud comes along and like a dark gray cloud and blocks out the sun for like, an hour or 2 hours, those flowers are naturally going to start turning their attention towards the lamp and growing towards the lamp.
Yes.
Then when the sun comes back out again, they'll grow back towards the sun.
Right.
So Mula nakshatras are very adaptable.
Mm.
They want to adapt to
Wow.
get nourishment, right? So plants grow to the light because they want to be nourished by the light. They dig their roots further down in the soil because they want to be nourished by the nutrients in the soil. So they adapt in the way they need to get nourishment. Okay. But we can adapt too much. It's good to be adaptable on a certain level, but if we adapt too much, then we do stupid things like going, oh, I'm going to go this way, right? Because this seems like the solution to the problem, when all you had to do is be patient and wait for the situation to change a little bit.
And sometimes you have to be solid with your ethics and morals.
Yeah, rather than adapting your
Rather
ethics
than
and
that.
morals too. Yeah, yeah. You have to be careful with that one though, because then it gets confusing with Dhatu. But that's
Yes.
definitely a really good point. So Mula nakshatras, they're adaptable, but they over adapt sometimes, right? So that would be in terms of relationship partners, they may over adapt to their partner's needs all the time, right? Then you have the Jiva nakshatras. Okay, so the Jiva kingdom is the animal kingdom. So in the
Oh,
animal kingdom, it's the law of the jungle. It's eat or be eaten. It's dominate or submit. It's lead or follow. It's always back and forth between those things, right? So
right.
the lessons with the Jiva nakshatras are when to lead, when to follow, when to assert yourself, when to surrender a little bit more. And they tend to fluctuate between those things. So for instance, if you've got, like, let's say for instance that the sun is your Darakaraka and
Mm-hmm.
it's in Punarvasu Nakshatra, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for instance, you're going to be more gravitated towards spouses who are supportive of you, who
Mm.
are able to be there for you, nurture you, willing to sacrifice for you because they're solid within themselves. But like, let's say for instance that you've got a weak Jupiter in the chart, then you're likely going to attract spouses who, perhaps want to be the center of attention, but are always wanting you to support them, right?
Oh,
So that's a good idea of what you attract. So the Mula nakshatras in terms of relationships. So let's say, for instance, we've got, let's pick a good one here. Let's say we've got Venus in, what's a really good one? Uttara Bhadrapada nakshatra. Okay. So you've got Venus in Uttara Bhadrapada nakshatra. That's going to create a very passionate and very loving spouse, because Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra is just generally that way. And they're going to, if Saturn's strong, like if you've got an exalted Saturn, they're going to want to really, they'll adapt their situation in order to take care of you. Right. But like,
right.
let's say if you've got a debilitated Saturn, right, that's going to be the type of spouse who's, or a relationship partner who's all lovey-dovey and, self-sacrificing. But at the same time, they don't really know what they want for themselves, and they're wanting you to nourish them. They're doing it with not original intent. They're doing it with the intent of wanting you to nourish them because they need nourishment. So they're adapting so that they get what they want from you. Right? Go ahead.
So, Lord of the Nakshatra determines how these kingdoms will work.
Exactly. And there's a really subtle way to look at this. I'm just giving your viewers a really
Yeah, I
subtle.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are some very subtle ways to look at this that help you to understand a lot of those qualities. Now, let's talk about the Jiva nakshatras. So if you have your Darakaraka in a Jiva Nakshatra, chances are you get attracted to people who appear stronger than you are, right? You won't go for weak-minded people. You want someone who is a challenge to you because they're stronger than you are. And what generally happens with those people, just one second, is they generally attract people who are stronger than them. And if that Jiva, or appear stronger than them, if that Jiva Nakshatra that the planet's in actually ends up being weaker, then the person becomes stronger than their relationship partner, and they're no longer interested in that person because they feel the person's weaker than them. So that's a real problem with Jiva Nakshatras, either relationship planets or even self-oriented planets, is they tend to gravitate towards attracting people into their life who they think are stronger than them, until they find out that they're stronger than the other person. Then they're no longer interested in the person because they're able to dominate them. They've conquered them and they're no longer interested, right? You had a question there for a moment?
Yes. When we have Darakaraka in Jiva kingdom, suppose we have Darakaraka in Ardra Nakshatra, so the people will look for the stronger partner. But will this create a clash between these partners?
It can.
They being strong?
It can, and especially if the person has, I don't want to bombard your viewers with too many things, but you're asking a really interesting question, which is, especially if the person has their Ketu in a Jiva Nakshatra, you know, like Ardra, Ashlesha, Uttara Falguni, Swati, Jeshta, Uttara, Ashada, Shatabhishaka, Revati. If their Ketu's there, they're going to, it's like they gravitate towards that. It's almost like they want it.
Oh.
Yeah, subconsciously, because it's a pattern, and it's a karmic pattern, especially with Ketu. Or self-oriented planets like the Atmakaraka, or you have the Lagna, or you have the Sun there, then you'll likely attract those people too. Because people who have prominent planets in Jiva Nakshatra, they want to be more assertive. And so they like, on a certain level, that tension that's there. They want to feel like they can conquer something, but once they've conquered it, then that thing that they've conquered appears weaker than they are, and they're not really interested anymore. And so it's hard for them to get good constancy in relationships. Yeah, go ahead.
Why only Ketu in Jiva Nakshatra is so significant?
Ketu represents, it's a good question, right? And I'm going to give a very detailed answer.
Yes.
Ketu deals in suppression. Interestingly enough, because when we think of Ketu, we think of liberation, and it does that too, right? Yes. But here's the way that Ketu suppresses things. So you can really understand Ketu well if you think of a child and how they relate to the world, okay? When a child is first born, it does certain things. And when it does certain things and acts in certain ways, and it gets the approval of its parents, then it goes, oh, my survival's ensured. I'm safe because my parents approve of me. Because it's very animalistic. They're still in that very animal side of themselves. Then if they do something that their parents don't like, they go, my survival's threatened. I better not do that. So in early childhood, based on the position of our Ketu, we develop patterns, which is why we're born into certain families in order to rehash that karmic patterning. But the where Ketu is represents that inherent karmic patterning. It's what we know well, right? And so if Ketu is in a Jiva Nakshatra, our approach to life in general is going to be one that's very Jiva oriented. Another thing that's really interesting too, if you really think about it, because we know about the Lagna, you know, that's the sign that's on the eastern horizon at the time someone's born. Well, the descendant is what's on the western horizon at the time you're born. Ketu and Rahu, on a certain level, kind of function as an additional ascendant and descendant.
Yes.
It's the ascendant of your karma. It's, you know, where you come from. Rahu is the descendant of your karma. Ketu will create this pattern that we kind of cling onto, right? Because it's what we know, it's what we're familiar with. Like if you take people who have been in prison for a long period of time, and you put them out on the streets, they don't know how to cope.
They will have no idea.
They've been spending their whole life in prison. It's what they know. And so we tend to gravitate towards those things that we know, even if they're not good for us, or even if they're things that we don't want. So we need Rahu to pull us towards the unfamiliar. That's why, interestingly enough, Rahu deals with foreign countries, right? It's because it represents things that we don't know, things that we're not familiar with, right? And so Ketu suppresses and keeps us stuck with what we know and what we're familiar with. And this is why Ketu and Rahu are always one and the same, because Rahu's job is to go, nope, I've got to pull you out of that and make you have all these difficult experiences that make you confront a lot of stuff. That way you can take what you learn through me back to Ketu, and then Ketu can then provide the liberation. Wow. But it's kind of like this pendulum swing that goes on between the two. So, and the reason I was saying Ketu with that is people who have Ketu in either Dhatu, Mula, or Jiva nakshatras will have an approach to life that's based upon that. And so it's a good way to understand the individual that you're dealing with, either as an astrologer or even for self-understanding, is to know whether your Ketu is in a Dhatu, a Mula, or a Jiva nakshatra, because it'll teach you a lot about a person and what they're needing to work with. Yes, go ahead.
So I have one question. Yeah. You are talking in depth about Rahu and Ketu with respect to the nakshatras, but what if people want to go in depth about knowing their Rahu and Ketu? What would you tell them? What you have to offer them? How you can help them with?
Yeah, I'm doing a group session on the 19th of August at 7 p.m. London time. If you look it up online, you can figure out what time that is in your time zone. I think Indian Standard Time, it's 11:30. All the way west in the States in Pacific time, it's like 11 a.m. in the morning. But if you want to join in on that, it's going to be a 3-hour group session. And for $49 for people who register, I'm going to take a brief look at Rahu and Ketu in the horoscope. And mainly just in the Rashi chart with the nakshatras, planets that are joining it. And for each person, give as, as much as I can give them with respect to everybody else who's there. Within that period of time, in terms of what that means in regards to their karmic path. So people who want to register for that, I do recommend that they do that soon, because I can only accept a certain number of people on it, so that I give people a decent amount of time, for things. So generally, I think like somewhere around 15 people is the limit in terms of what I'm able to handle, because that gives me a good 10 to 15 minutes for each person.
So you can go in depth for all the people in the group.
Yeah, I can do a brief look at it. If people are wanting to do something that's like a good half hour or 45 minutes, though, I do also have a consultation on my website called the Intensive Consultation, and that gives them a good 45-minute look at the nodal axis in their chart. Exactly, in addition to 2 predictive questions or any types of questions that they have.
Great.
Yep.
So we're talking about the 3 worlds.
The 3 kingdoms, yeah?
3 kingdoms.
Yeah, the 3 kingdoms, they're really important. And interestingly enough, they're a factor that's very little discussed. And that I find that's generally the case with nakshatras. And, it's amazing. You can, like, here's another way you can use this too. If you are an employer, say you're running a company and you have a lot of employees, and some of the birth information of some of your employees, right? Or you have friends or people that you're interacting with. You can also look at their Atmakaraka and see what type of nakshatra that it's in, and you're going to understand on a certain level their approach to life, right?
Okay.
So, for instance, I can give an example. Like if we went into this particular chart, let's say, here's another thing to look at too. The Amatyakaraka on many levels indicates the friend, right? So you can understand a lot about friends for an individual by looking at the Amatyakaraka and the Ratrakaraka. So, he likes friends who are constant in his life, right? Who are supportive, And he likely attracts to himself friends who are very Jiva oriented because his sun is in Ashlesha Nakshatra, right?
Wow.
So when we look at Mercury, he's got a good solid Mercury. So he likes friends who are a little competitive with him, right? He probably gets into a lot of competitions with his friends. With associates, it's a similar way. He likes to be around people who want to be leaders rather than say followers, right? Those are the types of people that he just naturally gravitates to. So you can understand so many things about the horoscope in very, very simple ways, knowing some very simple things about nakshatras. So here's the way you can make this for yourself, this chart for all your viewers who might want to do that. You just go and you write out a list and you put one heading Dhatu, next heading Mula, next heading Jiva. And you just quite simply go Ashwini, Bharani, Kritika, Rohini, Mrigashira, Ardra, Punarvasu, Pusha, Ashlesha, so on. And as long as you can do your nakshatras in order, you'll have a nice organized list like what I've got right here.
Yes.
In regards to what type of nakshatra each of these nakshatras is. Nakshatras are an area that is just so exceptionally vast and equally very little tapped into. And there's so much that we can learn through nakshatras. So for instance, we were talking about Ashlesha Nakshatra, for him. And Ashlesha Nakshatra is a Tikshna and Daruna Nakshatra. So it's sharp and it's very harsh, right? So, when we were looking at Neil Armstrong's chart a moment ago, he likely enjoyed a little bit of interaction with people that was, borderlining on tension. Yeah. And aggression on a certain level, because it's just what he likes and gravitates towards. He could be a person who likes to argue with people just by his very nature. So learning the nakshatras, and it's not as difficult as you might think. It really teaches you a lot. And if your viewers are interested in that too, I also have a what's called the Nakshatra Secrets course, which is presently in session, but finishing soon. But you can still purchase the course and you can catch up on all the past recordings. And then, if you don't catch up, if you don't join it in time to join in on the course live, you can catch it as a video recording too.
Wow, great. I will share the link with the description.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Most definitely. Did you have any other questions? I know you had mentioned something before we started talking about planets and degrees and things like that.
I have a few general questions.
Go ahead. Let's go back to the main screen for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
One of the question is when we talk about the Atmakaraka, Amatyakaraka, Darakaraka. Atmakaraka is a planet with the highest degree. Okay. And we also have one concept called as the Awasthas of the planet. Like planets in certain degrees, in certain rashis are Mrita or Bal, Vruddha. So how suppose I have a planet in a even rashi in a 28 degrees. So it would have its own dasha, but at the same, not dasha, the avastha. But at the same time, it will be Atmakaraka.
Here's the thing, with Jaimini astrology, to determine the well-being of those planets, the system I have found to be the most accurate is you don't use the Parashara, Avasthas for Jaimini Karakas.
Okay.
You just take the dignity of those planets to determine the well-being. But for planets as a ruler of a house and things along those lines, you do look at it that way. Even Naisargika Karakas, like the natural Karakas, like Mars for siblings and Moon for mother, you don't look at the Mrita or the Bala or the Yuva or any of the Avasthas like that. You just, when you're looking at a planet as a Karaka, it's just the dignity and planets that it joins.
Yes.
But for any other purpose, the Baladi Avasthas relate to the maturity of the planet. So for instance, if you hold on a second, I have a chart I can share with you.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, let me just find the right one.
Yes. As astrologers,
we have lots of like PowerPoints and things like that. So let's see, what was it? Yeah, this one would be a really good one to use. Let's go to that. And let's find the right slide. No, I haven't shared it yet, so don't think that I've forgotten it. I just haven't found the right slide yet. Okay, so I'm going to open this up and share it with people now. Okay, so here we're talking about the Baladi Avasthas. So for people who don't know, the odd signs are Aries, which is the first sign, Gemini, the third, Leo, the fifth, Libra, the seventh, Sagittarius, the ninth, and Aquarius, the 11th. So they're the odd numbered signs because of the order they come in. The even numbered signs are Taurus, the second sign, Cancer, the fourth sign, Virgo, the sixth sign, Scorpio, the eighth, Capricorn, the 10th, and Pisces, the 12th. That's what we mean when we say odd or even Rashi, okay? So when a planet is in Bala Avastha, which means infant, it's 0 to 6 degrees of an odd sign or 24 to 30 of an even sign. If a planet's Kumara, it's going to be 6 to 12 of an odd sign or 18 to 24 of an even sign. When a planet's Yuva, it's the same in both odd and even. It's just 12 to 18 degrees. When a planet is Vrita, that's 18 to 24 of an odd sign or 6 to 12 of an even sign. And when a planet is Mrita, it's 24 to 30 of an odd sign and 0 to 6 of an even sign. Okay, now you read that and you kind of go, wow, planets that are Mrita are bad. Well, first of all, I've never been a big fan of the words good or bad with planets.
Wow, I love that.
We have planets in our horoscope and they're there for a reason, right? So
Yes.
generally Mrita planets relate to karma that we've exhausted already, right? But we still feel that gravitational pull, right? We still feel pulled to do those things, right? Like let's say, for instance, in previous lifetimes, jobs used to matter to us a lot, and we work through a lot of things in regards to that. Well, we might end up with a career planet that's Mrita, and we still have that drive to be successful, but that planet's Mrita, and it can't bring that success. And it's just because we've kind of worked on that karma already. There's not that much to really do with it, right? And it's similar with Vrita planets. They're old. So the way that planets in old Avastha behave is, like, let's say, for instance, you're in a relationship and one of the planets that cause the relationship is Vrita. You may feel like, I don't really have time or energy for the stupid stuff in relationships anymore because it just wears me out and makes me exhausted. So generally, by Parashara rules, when a planet is Vrita or Mrita, it is prone to decay. So the things that it creates quite easily fall apart, or it can't even create it at all. Now, I said can fall apart or it can't create it at all. Let's explain that. So there's also another Avastha, which I'll share with your viewers. And these are called the Jagradati Avasthas. Now, the Jagradati Avastha, quite simply put, is if a planet is exalted or in its own sign or Mula Trikona, it's Jagrat. Right?
Yes.
If a planet's in a natural friend, not temporary friend, but natural friend or natural neutral sign, it's Swapna or sleepy. Okay. And if a planet is in a natural enemy sign or debilitated, it's asleep. Okay. So Sushupti planets are also prone to decay. Swapna planets, they're okay. And obviously Jagrat planets are stronger. But the reason I wanted to point that out is you can have a planet that's in its own house and Mrita, right? So it can be a productive planet for creating things, but those things that it creates can have the potential to fall apart at a later date if a difficult dasha period comes along that provides challenges, right? So maturity of a planet just generally shows the maturity level with which we approach something. So for instance, some things that I've seen are planets that are Bala. Quite often, sometimes the person can be in phases with that particular planet where they behave in a very childish manner, right? Or they have a level of enthusiasm with that planet, but they still make stupid mistakes, because Bala planets can be productive, but they need assistance from other planets. I like using the analogy. I think I actually may have put it here. Yeah, I put a little list here to explain it to people.
Great.
Okay.
Wow.
So, as Bala means infant, the things with which the individual is engaging are not things with which they are fully adept. So for instance, if an infant needed to play the guitar, chances are, unless they're a born virtuoso, they're not going to be able to do so, right?
Yes.
Then their fingers would be too small to do it adeptly, right? So they're going to need some assistance. That's the case with Bala Avasta planets. They're not fully adept. Kumara Avasta, Kumara means adolescent or youthful. So these planets are capable of being productive, but they can still kind of mess things up from time to time. Yuva Avasta is where talents peak. These are the most productive planets, okay? Then you have Vritta planets. As we get older, though we have skills, we're not able to engage them with the same level of energy. Our strength begins to wane, and so Vritta planets are less productive. And I jokingly put here, with the dead planets, when you're dead, you're good at one thing, which is being dead, right?
Yes.
Right. So Mrita planets, in terms of the Baladi component of strength, are not able to be productive unless it's also in its own house, or Mula Trikona, or exalted. But if they're also awake, then they are. That's kind of what I was saying. But they would be so to a lesser degree. You could kind of look at it as they're only doing it as being an influencing spirit upon the event. It's not really going to last with the Mrita Avasta. So people quite often get freaked out when they see those Mrita planets in their chart, but everybody has them. It's just life in general. It's just generally the Mrita planets that we have are the planets that we're wanting to be the most productive. But, you know, and so we're wanting the opposite of what they're able to really do.
Right.
And a lot of it is about learning, like, about what planets you have in your chart and developing strategies in your life that work, and strategies that don't work. And I'm also teaching a class on that starting in late August, which is on the Lajatati Avastas.
Wow.
Which relate to how the planets are helped or hindered in finding fulfillment in the horoscope. And this is mathematically qualified. And so it works on the premise that, you know, when, I'll give you an example. So if Venus is in Cancer, it creates a condition called a starved Venus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Venus is being starved by the moon in that particular instance. So the moon, as we were saying earlier, is all about fulfilling our needs, right? So what would end up happening in that scenario is the person ends up having to do things to fulfill their needs that take away from their long-term sense of pleasure and enjoyment in life, right? And that's what a starved Venus kind of functions like. So if you have like a starved Venus in your chart, you're needing to find the planets that are supporting that Venus, so you develop better strategies to than getting stuck in the pattern of having your Venus starved. So there are planets that help and there are planets that hinder. So when you're dealing with a planet that's being hindered on a certain level, you want to find the planets that are helping it and develop a strategy in association with those planets. And that's what the Lajatati Avastas course will teach people, amongst other things. Yeah, go ahead.
I have two questions. As in, if I have one planet, let's take an example. I have Saturn in Mrita or Balavastha.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I'm not talking about Lajjata Avastha, but
just the Baladi Avasta.
Lajjita Avastha. But if it is in a bad condition, I would say. Mm-hmm. So will this being into Balavastha will help, or in Mrita Avastha will help, or it will furthermore create complications?
Well, it's the important thing to understand with the Baladi Avastas and the Jagardati Avastas is they help to show us the productivity of a planet, right? Okay. So here's the thing. The Deep Tati Avastas, which are mainly the dignity of the planets, but also it's with the deep Tadi Avasthas, also we have incorporated when a planet's joined with the cruel planet, also known as a malefic, that creates something called Vikala, or impaired Avastha. Equally, when we have a planet join the sun, even if it's not combust, it makes that planet copy. But other than that, the deep Tadi Avasthas are just the dignity of the planet. Like, for instance, a planet in a neutral, like in the condition of neutral, temporal dignity, is going to be in scarce Avastha. So what the dignity of a planet indicates is how that planet feels as it goes about doing what it's doing. So like, let's say, for instance, you had Saturn in a great enemy sign, right? And it was Kumara. And it's also going to be Sushupti. So what's going to happen with that planet and the houses that it's associated with? It can produce those houses, but producing those houses is very challenging, makes the person feel miserable, doesn't make things easy for them. So if the dignity of the planet is bad, or if it's joined with cruel planets, the experience of creating that is difficult. And then you look at the Baladi Avastha, like Bala, Kumara, Yuva, to see if it's actually going to be able to be productive. So if a planet is Kumara or Yuva, it can still be productive, but it's not going to be an enjoyable situation. Yeah. So like, let's say it brings up a whole really interesting experience, because you can look at somebody's chart and you can go, wow, okay, well, it looks like at this particular time, you're going to get married because you have all these planets with marriage agenda that are coming together, and they're all Kumara, and it's all going to work out so that you can get married. But guess what? They're an enemy sign, they're great enemy signs. So that means that it's not going to be a happy experience for you.
Oh.
And so that's how you can kind of interact with all these different factors there. I'm running a little bit out of time, sadly enough. I feel sad for that, because I could talk for another hour.
Yes. Okay, so...
Did you have one more question, though, before?
Yes, I have one question, as in, if I have a Saturn in enemy Rashi, and it is ruling the 12th house, and it is in some difficult avastha, or say mrita avastha, will it, what impact it will have?
Okay, the impact of the planet with like the Bala or the Kumara Avastha, it's not associated with the house that it's in, other than creating the dignity, because that will determine the dignity of the planet. It's more the houses that planet rules that become the areas that fall apart. So you were saying, like, let's say if it was the second or the third house and it was in a bad Avastha, then the person may have the tendency to not be able to be as steady or constant in terms of earning. But you don't determine all that just by the Rashi chart. You need to go in and look at the appropriate Varga chart for the event. So in terms of finances, that would be the Hora chart and the Chaturtamsha chart. Yes.
And what if it rules 12th house?
If
or
it
Kushtana houses?
Yeah, if it rules the 12th house, then it can create a lot of loss in the individual's life. Yeah, or they have a hard time with expenses in their life, and yeah, they end up with a lot of expenses and things that they can't really manage, so to speak.
Okay, so...
But you can have a very strong 12th Lord, and this is where a lot of people, like, sometimes people get caught up in the misconception. For instance, like if you have a strong Saturn in your chart, people go, oh, well, Saturn's strong, so it's going to create more problems. In terms of Lajatati...
Exactly. That's what my question was.
Yeah. In terms of Lajatati Avasthas, it can, because it can starve a planet even more. But in terms of just regular things, like a planet being productive, you want to have a strong Saturn, because that's going to make the experience less difficult. It's when planets are weak, when cruel planets are weak, that they're more problematic.
Exactly. That's what I was looking for. Yes.
Exactly.
Michael, final question to you. How people can reach out to you if they want a session with you, consultation from you, they want to learn more about their Rahu Ketu, about the Nakshatras, or maybe some Gemini. So how they can reach out to you? What will you tell my viewers?
Sure. On my website, which is authenticastrology.com, I have a link for astrological services. That will take you to my astrological services page, obviously. And on that page will be several different types of consultations listed. If you hover over the astrological services link, there will be a drop-down menu, and there's a link there for the Rahu Ketu course if people are interested in that. That's the one that was $49. Right next to that is a link for webinar courses. These are my live courses. I have the Lajatati Awasthas course, which starts later this month, and a few next year. You can register for all those. The video course are courses that are in the past that are recorded to video that people are also able to register for. That's another link. And if any of your viewers want to register for any courses or do a consultation, and I will say including the Rahu Ketu course, they can do that by using the discount code Prasad333, all uppercase letters. And if they do that before the over the next 3 days by, let's say, 10:30 p.m. on the 10th, then they can get a 10% discount on those.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for being on my channel and sharing. Looking forward to many more interviews with you for in-depth nakshatra knowledge from you.
Oh, I would love that. And thanks for having me on.
Namaste.